A new armor was added to Tarkov this wipe, which at first glance looks very good, but is it the best in the game, or does the crown still stay with the AACPC? Today I'll be going through all the best armors that you can get beginning at level 15 and going up to max traders and the endgame. So when you unlock the flea market at level 15, there are a couple of ways to go about gearing up your PMC with the cheapest by looking for class 4 armor that's already fully set up on the market directly. I tend to look for the 6B13s of either variety and 6B23-2s because these ones have the Eastern Class 4 plates by default, as well as the MMAC and the Banshee rigs because these have the lightest Sappy plate at Class 4. Most of these carriers will be empty, but a small number will be listed with their default plates by lazy players who can't be bothered to split them out on the flea market. You can check this here on this little icon. Between these 5 armors, you can normally find one that is very cheap, often costing the same as an empty plate carrier, and because the plates that these come with are all either armor steel or polymer, they repair extremely closely to max durability regardless of how beaten up they are. The two things to watch out for are firstly that the max durability is not too low. You can typically check for this just by looking up what the max durability should be, either by flicking through and seeing what they typically start at because the ones at max will all be the same. Otherwise, if you're looking at an armor without that many listings, you can also check the handbook instead. The second thing is to double check that some sneaky person hasn't added class 3 plates to the armor and listed it that way. This is much more prevalent on the Sappy plates because there's nothing to stop people from doing this, and although 95% of the time each armor will have its original plates, occasionally I have spotted a little scam here and there. With that checked, buy whichever is the cheapest of these and you're good to go with minimal hassle. If there aren't any decently pre-built armors on the flea market for whatever reason, you can instead simply get by with a 6B33 front plate, which is the diamond shaped one, and then linked search for the cheapest carrier that you can get your hands on. Alternatively, you can do the same thing with the class 4 monoclete plates because they're very cheap whilst having a low weight, but if you do this, just be careful that you don't accidentally buy a press armor, for example, that will only take a 6B33 in the front plate but the monoclete in the back plate, which is why it comes up on the linked search. If you want to do some more tinkering because all of these basic armors come with class 2 soft armor underneath, you can go looking for a class 3 soft instead. This is the layer underneath the plate that's integrated into the armor itself. The two broad choices you have here is whether you want class 3 soft armor but don't care about the neck protection that much, the cheapest of which is almost always the Thor Concealable or the ANA Tactical M2 rig, or alternatively whether you do care about neck armor. In that case, you typically have to spend a little bit more on the Flea for a carrier with this feature, and usually the cheapest are either the Gen 4 Mobility or the Defender 2. Technically speaking, the Gen 4 Mobility has more neck protection than the Defender because the Defender only protects from the front and does not have armor on the back of the neck, whereas the Gen 4 series do. You can see this in the tooltip for the armor areas. So without progressing further, this is the best that you can get in the stash using the Flea, a class 4 plate inside a class 3 carrier, with or without neck protection depending on your preference. This is because class 5 is banned on the flea market, with the exception of side plates, so you can in theory have those plates with some of these armors as well, and they are pretty cheap now due to the existence of trader flipping. But to get front or back plates, we do have to do a bit more work with the traders because the plate alchemy situation from last wipe has been removed and has frankly been made more sensible. Previously, many players were cloning GAC Class 5 plates by using the AACPC and TacTech lavatory crafts, which required 1 plate in but gave 2 out with the armor, and so for patch 15, the AACPC craft has been removed completely and the TacTech one requires 2 plates as an input instead. You can make Bagaris as well still, but this requires 2 BR4s to get a Corund front and back out with the rig, which isn't worth doing either. The only reason to use either of these 2 crafts now, i.e. the TacTech one or the Bagari, is to repair existing GAC and BR4 plates that have degraded max durability, as they will come out at full HP. In that case then, the quickest min-max way of getting class 5 plates for your armor depends on what you want to do between the base game and Tarkov Arena if you have it. In the absence of Arena, the fastest path to get them consistently is completing Prapor's quest Reconnaissance, which unlocks the Corund VM front plate on Prapor 3 through a golden egg barter that you can just buy off the Flea. Reconnaissance is a bit of a pain because it's a lighthouse quest, but it only requires Easy Job Part 1 to be completed beforehand, and prior to that, everything up until Punisher Part 2, so it's not that far ahead. This isn't too bad to get done, except for obviously the lighthouse part because lots of people don't really like that map, but fortunately, although Recon requires you to visit each of the water treatment roofs, you can actually do each one in different raids, which makes it significantly easier. You don't need to survive between finding the different locations. So once you've done this and you have the Corund front plate unlocked and Prapor 3 open, you can then grab these plates and stick them in any compatible armor. The cheapest is the 6B23-1 and the 6B23-2, and unless you're wanting to add side plates, then I'd just keep to those two rather than spending a bunch of money on a Corund or a Bagari carrier from the Flea, which are the other 2 alternatives. The other way is getting to ref level 3 through a combination of regular ref tasks in the base game as well as dailies and weeklies in Arena itself. This is already extremely well known now, and I did a whole video about Ref and what he has previously, but for the low price of 22 GP coins, you can get a full AACPC rig with 2 GAC plates as well as 2 Class 5 sides along with it as a bonus. Clearly, this is amazing value and typically only takes the completion of a single daily quest to buy one because the GP coin price is so low. In my experience, after playing a decent amount of Arena so far this wipe, the fastest way to get the dailies done is simply to roll everything into Last Hero and ideally finish them in one single run. Chop Shop has 6 players, and I believe a few others do as well now, Bay 5 and Equator, which makes getting into the top 5 or top 4 for some of the daily quests even easier, as you only have to do better than 1 or 2 other people. So both the Karun front plate in pretty much any armor or the AACPC from Ref are totally fine to play with, as just having Class 5 is a huge step up from Class 4, especially in this wipe when everything up to 41 pen is available on the Flea, i.e. the pen that will easily defeat Class 4 armor. At level 4 traders though, there is a lot more choice and some other budget picks too that can be good. Do note though that the availability of Class 6 has been dramatically reduced. First up, we have the Karund and Bagari directly on Prapor 4 and Ragman 4 for 185k and 145k respectively. The Karund does come with side plates, but these are only 8k each from Prapor 4, so overall the Bagari is actually cheaper when fully loaded out with armor. The big difference between these two is that you don't get any neck or groin protection on the Bagari, but you do get Class 3 soft instead because the Karund is surprisingly only Class 2. This means the only benefit to it over the cheapo armors is that you can put in side plates, which makes me not really like the Karund very much. An interesting budget alternative is the Defender 2, also on Ragman 4. This can't take any side plates but is Class 3 and does have soft armor on the side, so you're not super vulnerable to buckshot. This one only costs a sledgehammer and comes with 2 BR4 plates, which are a little bit worse than the Karund on durability and unfortunately are made of ceramic materials, meaning they don't repair well at all, and it's probably the reason why this one is kind of cheap. There's a new rig on Ragman 4, the Tasmanian Tiger Plate Carrier Mark III, which honestly sucks. It has no soft armor at all, and it only contains 2 Tallcom Guardian plates, which at 3.5 kilograms each are the heaviest plate in Class 5. The rig itself sells back to Ragman fairly well at 82k, but I still don't think that spending 50k on each Tallcom is good value for money compared to the alternatives. The other plate acquisition barter, I guess you'd call it, that can be good is the Hex Attack. This is decent because the GAC plates are some of the best. After all, it's what makes the AACPC so good. 3 rollers is about 180k, and you can sell back the Hex Attack main body for just over 30,000 rubles, so it's around 75k for each GAC plate that you can do with what you like. Thinking back to earlier, Thors and ANA M2s aren't a terrible idea if you don't care about the neck soft armor, and these two combos are some of the lightest in the whole game, allowing you to use the side plates as well with ease if you don't have high strength. For the rest of the armors, the main problem for me is the overall weight. You can do what we just discussed by replacing the plates out, but in their standard configurations they are very hefty. This starts with the Osprey protection on Peacekeeper 4. Requiring 3 SAS drives, you get 2 more of these monstrous Tallcom plates, which when combined with sides comes out to a whopping 16 kilograms. This barter has been severely reduced in effectiveness due to SAS drive demand from Cult Circle enjoyers, as all of the intel items are being sacrificed for quest items from hopeful PMCs. After completing Textiles Part 1, you can buy the Gen 4 Assault from Ragman 4 for 205k in cash. This is marginally lighter than the Osprey because the Cult Locust plates are nearly 1 kilo less each, coming with Class 5 sides as well by default. Interestingly, the Gen 4 Mobility is actually not much lighter than the Gen 4 Assault and comes without sides on Ref 4 after Living High Part 1. The final Gen 4 armor is the full version, also on Ragman 4, but this costs a ton of money because of the barter and is certainly not worth it. All of the Gen 4s come with Class 3 neck both front and back, which isn't actually super common because a few others like the Defender that we've mentioned before and the Redoute M only have soft armor neck protection at the front. The Redoute itself used to be purchasable using a trick to grab car manuals off fence for 5k, greatly reducing the cost of the barter, but these have been increased up by a lot to about 30,000 rubles, so now it costs about 200k to buy the armor. Unfortunately, the Granite BR4 plates that it comes with are still just not very good, with the Cult Locusts on the Gen 4 series having over 50% extra effective durability. The same goes for the Redoute T5. This is incredibly expensive, costing 3 lions, comes with BR4s as well, and all you really get here is arm protection extra over the Redoute M. It does get Class 6 side plates by default, which is nice as these are pretty expensive on the Flea and not sold on their own anymore by the traders, but many of these so-called high-end armors just aren't worth it for a bit of extra Class 3 when you take into account the negative move speed debuffs that they give you. 95% of the work these days is being done by the front and back plates, and in Class 5, most of these are either not really available or not very good. One of the problems from a balancing perspective with the Karun plate and the GAC plate via the AACPC being so accessible is that with their effective durability and material type, they are actually better than most of the other plates in their class. You can buy Granite BR4s, which is the Sappy style Eastern plate, Granite 4 fronts, which are the class 5 diamond shaped plates, and the Sappy 3+ Western plate at higher trader levels, level 4, as well as quests much further along in the progression. But you do all of that, and what for? Ceramic plates with worse protection at the same price or higher than the Karun front plate. How the progression is structured right now makes all of these three basically pointless, except for maybe the Sappy 3+ in the instance that you don't have ref, as these are the second lightest plate in class 5, so they can let you go underweight with a wider range of kits. The one decent-ish plate is the Cult Locust, which is purchasable after Peacekeeping Mission from Skier, requiring a Golden Rooster, but it's usually cheaper just to buy a Gen 4 Assault and sell the carrier back to Ragman. Before we move on to Class 6 and the endgame armors, I do want to just mention that BSG have recently added the Gazelle and the Zabralo back to the traders, although empty with no plates in them. You can now get the Gazelle for 1 gold chain and 2 Magica coffees. These are still kind of expensive, but I expect the price to die down on this because people just need them for quests and they're still working through buying them. Once the prices go down, you will be able to buy the Granite 4 Ballistic front plate from Prapor 4 after you've completed Energy Crisis for only 48k. So if the Magica coffees go back down to about 10,000 rubles and the gold chains go back down to about 40, you could buy the base carrier and the front plate for about 100,000. The reason this will be interesting to some people is the Gazelle has class 3 soft armor, so rather than having to choose between neck armor at class 2 or class 3 without neck with the Bagari and the Karun decision, with the Gazelle you'll be able to have best of both, although with very slightly less durability on the front plate. The Zabralo has made a return on Prapor 4, and I don't think that this is one that people should be buying just because the debuffs are too high, and as I said, it's the plates that do most of the work, so buying an empty carrier like this for 300-400,000 rubles doesn't make sense. But there are a couple of quests that require you to use this armor, which is the reason why it is good that it has been re-added back to the traders with no plates. So, Class 5 isn't really an issue after some specific questing, and there's not much point paying over the odds for it. Class 6 on the other hand is much harder to get now. The one exception is Ref 4. He also stocks the Zabralo for 59 GP coins, and this comes with the BR5 plate in the front and back, which is Class 6. This is now the single and only place where it's possible to get Class 6 front and back plates directly on the traders, so if you don't have Ref at this level or have Arena at all, then you'll have to go into Raid to get Class 6 instead. For non-arena players, the best bet so far is to visit Kibba at the centre of Interchange. The shelves often stock Class 6 plates, although it's clearly a bit of a hotspot and you can get trapped in the room. For arena players without Ref 4, most people that want Class 6 are using the Grumpy key found on Ref 2 and bartering the occasional Lega medal they get for it, which provides the 5-use key. You'll have to visit the room in the power station, loot it and extract, but it does provide Class 5 and 6 armor as well as decent weapons like spears and kitted MCXs and good endgame bullets too. So now that we have some good plates and we can choose what to put them in, what then is the best of the best armor to use for PvP? Last wipe, I was pushing the AACPC after the plate update occurred, because the specific way that the plate and soft mechanics function allow the AACPC soft armor to cover the entire thorax all the way around, including under the sides of the arms, which is not the case for regular Class 3 soft armor vests. And one of the new armors is also like this, which is why it's specifically interesting to understand this wipe. Regular vests have thorax protection split into two parts, the soft armor coverage and the plate. For most armors, soft armor covers thorax and back, which refers to the front and back sides of the cube that makes up the PMC's actual thorax hitbox. But the sides of this hitbox are not possible to cover with soft armor directly. There is no thorax side hitbox associated with any armors in the game. However, ever since the plate changes were made, the front plate itself goes around the arms and covers the side hitboxes instead, and this is the armor area front plate. Usually, this is fine by itself, even on the regular armors, because it means that you're covered all the way around with whatever class of plate you're using. But in the case of the AACPC, this gets turbocharged because this armor doesn't have separate hitboxes for the soft armor. Thorax and back are not present in the armor areas on the AACPC, and this is because the soft armor is assigned to the front plate area as well as the actual plate that you put in, and this means that the soft armor follows the plate around the arms and gives you soft plus plate all the way around your PMC's vital thorax. Does this matter that much? Well, not really. It often gives you one extra shot specifically from the side versus rounds in the 40 to 50 pen range when using Class 5 and 6 plates, which are the bullets used a lot by max trader PMCs, but in the grand scheme of things, it is probably a micro adjustment. However, it is technically the best armor if you want to maximize your survival chance against other players. The list of armors that are like this is pretty small, and the biggest downside to them is that there are none of this type with neck protection, which I know is a must-have for some people, and probably rightly so on PvE or in the early wipe. Later on though, from about a month in, which is about the time of this recording, all PMCs will be running 30 plus pen ammo, so the only thing you'll be getting saved from is scavs. This is even more so this wipe when people can buy things like M856A1 off the Flea. More specifically, if you want class 3 soft armor with this special armor type that goes all the way around, and side plates too, the only choices are the AACPC, the Cry Precision CPC from the Goons, and, as of patch 15, the Stitch Profi Defense Mod 2. This new one is only the third carrier that works in this particular way, and unfortunately it has class 6 plates by default, which means that it is not on the traders, but the empty rig can be bought on the Flea. Compared to the AACPC, its stats aren't actually quite as good, with -6% move speed and -3% turn speed, and the internal space is a little bit more limited. However, it is 1 kilogram lighter, so if you're prioritizing weight, then it's technically the best for that. Given the AACPC is so easily available on ref, I think that it will continue to be all over Tarkov this wipe, and being find and raid only, the Profi defense will be relatively rare. But do bear it in mind as one of the 3 best PvP armors in the game, even if the AACPC has still remained on top. So as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.